Everyone is Addicted is a judgment-free space for real conversations about addiction. It's a show about breaking the stigma and building empathy. Everyone is Addicted, Mondays at 11 p.m.
What's going on, everybody? This is the host of Recover Out Loud podcast, Sean Young. Before we dive in, I want to be clear. I'm not a medical professional. I'm not here to diagnose or treat. I'm simply a catalyst, someone who's walked through the fire and now speaks from experience, reflection, and a deep desire to help others find their way forward. This podcast may include honest conversations about addiction, mental health challenges, and suicidal thoughts or ideations. These are real parts of the human experience, and we won't shy away from them. If you're listening, please do so with self-care and self-awareness. And if you're struggling, please reach out. There's help out there. And most importantly, there's hope. Viewer discretion is advised. Now let's get it. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Recover Out Loud, episode 123. Today, we got a really awesome guest. We got Daniel Gospodarek. How you doing, Daniel?
I'm doing well. How are you, Sean?
Man, I'm doing great. It's a great day to be alive. I'm looking out the window and the sun's shining, and it's not too hot, unlike where you're from. So
yeah, it's pretty humid here in the Midwest, but
yeah, definitely. So, Derek, would you like to give us a formal introduction of yourself?
Yeah, for sure. So again, my name is Daniel Gospodarek. I am a licensed clinical social worker based in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and I typically work with men who've experienced various forms of trauma, betrayal trauma, infidelity, traumatic brain injuries, PTSD, just anywhere in that kind of trauma response or childhood trauma response continuum. So that is my kind of specialty, but I also have my own story of recovery around having a traumatic brain injury when I was 17. So
absolutely
share a little bit about both during this podcast.
Absolutely. So before we dive into your story and some of the more heavier stuff, we were talking off camera, and you have a long lineage of family members that were in the military.
Yeah.
So first off, man, like I just want to say I've only met one other person who had a family member in the Civil War, and you're another.
Yeah, number two.
Yeah, number two, man. Number two. That's awesome. So yeah, like give us a little breakdown of like who, what family members served in the military and like kind of what capacity they did.
Yeah, for sure. So great-great-grandfather was Civil War, wounded in Augusta, Georgia. My grandfather then was in Korea, was a Marine, and he was in the artillery. I forget the exact term. I just know I saw his journal when I was younger, and it had a whole bunch of howitzer and ranges and stuff like that for the different shell sizes. And then all of his brothers, my grandfather's brothers, were in World War II as well. Some in the European theater, some in Pacific, and then had some other uncles in World War II as well on my grandmother's side that my grandfather married that were also in World War II. So, and cousins.
Absolutely. Yeah. As far as I can trace my family back, my great grandfather on my grandma's side was in World War II. He was a Cav Scout in World War II. I wasn't a Cav Scout when I was in. We always kind of made fun of those guys, but he was a Cav Scout nonetheless. And then my grandfather on my dad's side was he was a Marine in Vietnam, and so I hold that era of veterans, like those two, World War II and Vietnam, like real close to my heart, because if you look at the dynamic of the men that were coming back, completely different, right? Like World War II, they came back and they just kind of fell right back into normal life, right? business owners, shop owners, what have you.
Yeah.
And they didn't talk about the trauma that they went through. They just kind of shoved it down and lived their life. And it wasn't necessarily so healthy.
Yeah.
And then you see the veterans that are coming back from Vietnam, and they were treated like absolute garbage.
Yeah.
And then they turned to drugs and alcohol.
Right.
And I mean, and then also like you're in the height of the war on drugs. So like those guys suffered a lot, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally.
Yeah.
And
Homelessness too.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, homelessness, yeah. Absolutely. There's a movie called Jacob's Ladder that I don't know if you've seen it or not, but it's about a bunch of Vietnam veterans coming back home and like doing drugs like PCP, meth, heroin, and all that stuff. And like it shows like the depths of despair of how deep that shit took. Yeah.
Right. And to open it from a little bit of a psychology perspective, I was in a cognitive processing therapy training. I know the VA uses a lot of CPT, and my trainer actually, she oversees a few different VA clinics down in Ohio, and she's older than me, maybe 50s, maybe 60s now. But when she had first started and was researching on CPT and implementing this program, one of the things that came up was um, a Vietnam veteran, right? Now, mind you, this was maybe 15, 20 years ago. So 40, 50 years after Vietnam, right? And the Vietnam veteran had so much shame because he became sexually aroused while he was in a firefight.
Yeah.
And he was like, why did I like killing people that much? And it's actually no. On a physiological standpoint, your body's nervous system and your body's physiology responds in a similar way to being sexually aroused and also in that fight or flight, right? But for decades, this veteran carried the shame and the guilt of, did I really enjoy killing people this much?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I don't think people think inherently, human beings don't like killing people, right? Like I mean, I think we do.
I would hope most of us don't.
Yeah, I would hope most of us don't. I mean, we do see the psychopathic human beings out there, serial killers and stuff that, just thoroughly enjoyed it. But I think like every normal human being, even veterans, right? We don't enjoy that. Like I loved my time in the service, and I enjoyed some of the things I did on deployment. But when we got in the firefights, man, like fight or flight, I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy it one bit because it's like so many things could go wrong. And even then, I think every human being is inherently bred with that that feeling of like empathy for another human being. So, and it all depends on the level of empathy that we have for them. But Daniel, we're gonna jump into your story, man, because you got a story and you got a lot of experience around a very big topic that I like to cover. But so you said when you were 17, you had a traumatic brain injury. What happened?
Yeah, so we were just a regular summer day. It was a one car rollover actually. So, but I was a passenger. Then we had a driver who was actually somebody that I was very close to growing up, and then I'm still close to now. But yeah, we ended up rolling 3 times on the cement, and then the fourth roll pushed us into the ditch and then into a farm field. So, but the last part I remember, I dropped something, and he had looked down, took something off the dashboard to like see like, oh, it kind of slides under here. And that was the last part I remember, is seeing like the red, the yellow, and the blue like circuit wires, and then woke up 3 days later from a coma. So yeah.
Wow. So
Sorry.
traumatic brain injury affects people differently. I know when I had mine, like I had a slew of things, but in comparison to somebody else I've seen, another veteran, his traumatic brain injury rendered him speechless. Like this man just can't talk. He's tried. What were your symptoms and how hard was it for you to work through them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like some of my symptoms almost evolved as recovery. took place, right? So I would say some of mine right off the bat, right, had that brain surgery. So like there was a tremendous amount of brain fog, right? Difficulty analyzing what happened, where am I, what's going on, right? Heavily reliant on doctors, nurses, family. And then did 10 days ICU, 7 days inpatient rehab, and then 17 months of speech therapy, and then 3 months of physical therapy. But the speech therapy wasn't so much for talking, it was more so being able to switch from task to task and building up that ability and the flexibility to switch, and then to re-pick up whatever activity I needed to come back to, right? And then also the speech therapy focused on, and these are just like more medical pieces, but because they had to cut my head right here, everything on this side of my head, so everything pulled over here, right? Wow. So they had to do like electrical shock therapy to like restart these neurons connecting and stuff, so that then now everything can pull back and be in the middle, right? But yeah, so a lot of brain fog. I mean, I lost a ton of weight because I was on a feeding tube for 7 days. So I went from like 185 to 165. And then, yeah, let's see. So at first the symptoms were kind of subdued because of the brain fog, right? And then like, yeah, okay, like I know I need to do physical therapy or speech therapy, but really the big part was getting these muscles back connected to kind of pull things back over. And then as I was at home, it was like, okay, noticing anxiety, noticing challenges with impulsivity, noticing challenges with irritability and anger, and then rage, right? I mean, just over minute things. Like for my entire life, my dad was a farmer and would be up at 4, and he would do dishes at 4:30, and it never bothered me. But like for some reason, my heightened senses after the TBI, I could like hear the silverware going into the drying rack after he had washed it, and I would just go like, "What are you doing?" You know, a lot of fatigue. Sleeping 16, 17 hours a day was, if there was an Olympic sport, I'd probably be up there for it. And then like I said, they kind of evolved, because then November I got my first concussion, because your head is so much more susceptible to concussions after a severe traumatic brain injury. So then the thought rumination of wanting to fall asleep but not being able to fall asleep would keep me up for two-ish hours, right? So I would go to bed at 8 if I wanted to go to bed actually by 10, right? And then the anger would be there, and I'd be smacking my pillow because I couldn't fall asleep, right? And then there was more anxiety. Definitely tried the workout, yoga, everything, and then ended up in counseling, and that helped a crap ton. But yeah, it was almost like the anger at some points it was almost like seething out of my skin. I could like feel it. It was so intense.
Yeah, definitely. I went through a bit of that. I did a lot of forms of therapy, man. And it was like probably a year after I had my TBI, my last bad one, that I actually was diagnosed with TBI and started my treatment. And like I did speech therapy, occupational therapy, so like hand-eye coordination, stuff like that, physical therapy, individual counseling, and then like music therapy. And music therapy was the thing that unlocked it all.
Yeah.
It opened the floodgates, really, and like it opened the floodgates for all the feelings, right? The anger, the frustration, all that stuff. And so I definitely can relate to that. Did you lose like the ability to walk after? Because I know some people, when they go through that stuff, they lose the ability to use their limbs at first.
Yeah. So good question. So when I was in the ICU was the first time I walked, and it was with 3 nurses and then a gait belt, which a lot of people, listeners, might even know what that is, but it's like a thick belt around your waist in case you start to fall. Nurses can just pick you back up pretty much, or slow your fall. And then I held onto a wheelchair and I walked around the nursing station. But that was something, you know, the doctors told my parents was, A, we don't know if he'll make it through the night after the night of the accident. 2, we also don't know what his long or short-term impairments may be, right?
Yeah.
Is he going to have to relearn how to talk? Is he going to have to relearn how to read, right? Walk, etc. But in one of the things that one of the doctors said, it was around one of my last days in the ICU. They're like, "Oh, we don't know if you're going to graduate," because I was going into my senior year of high school. So like they were like, "We don't know if you're going to graduate with the class that you started with, right?" And I was like, "I will."
Yeah.
Right? And you know, it's probably a mix of like, you know, adolescent or like young adulthood defiance and like, it, you know, that you're kind of, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? So this is sometimes comes up with my TBIs. I can't find the word that I need, but it doesn't happen that often, but just that defiance was there. And I went ahead and I did graduate with my class. Right. But that's another part of like therapy, right? Is like uncovering your grit, right? That nobody's going to do the healing for you. Right. And you can choose not to do it too. Right. Like, a lot of people choose not to do it, or they choose to not pay attention to it. And then they just maybe run their lives into the ground. Right. Yep. Or you can take the time, and it's like forced patience, which was really hard for me.
Absolutely. And how far along in your recovery did the memories start coming back to you?
The memories?
Yeah.
Or I never lost any of my memory.
Okay. No, I know for me, like one of my big symptoms was short-term and long-term memory. Like just absolutely. Was that something that you suffered from? Like not being able to remember things prior to or after?
Not so much.
Okay.
I would say that my short-term memory after the accident was probably was poorer than what it normally was. Mm-hmm. But it was I got home maybe the last week of July, early August or something. And I started my senior year of high school at the end of August.
Wow.
You know, like I didn't, you know, it was like go time.
Yeah. Yeah. You weren't going to let anything stop you.
And you know, also hats off to my high school because we had the block system. So it was just 4 classes a day. Yeah. And how it worked out with my credit load was if I started my first semester and I just did half days because my fatigue was so high, I would go home every day and take an hour to 3 hour nap, right? After just 3 hours of school. That was way too much. And then second semester, I did a full day and then a half day, but I would still be sleeping, you know? But I graduated with like the bare minimum of credits that you needed to graduate, you know, but I still graduated, you know?
Yeah.
But again, that comes back to kind of that grit and like, nobody's going to do this road for you. And at times it's very lonely. And at times it's also very empowering because you're just like, I can withstand a lot. One of my favorite quotes that I heard, I can't remember who said it, but it's like, I stand as one, but I come as 10,000, right? For all your ancestors that come behind you. Right. Yep. And for me, like I draw on that quite often because I mean, life is still going to get hard. Yeah,
absolutely. Life doesn't stop when things happen.
No. And you don't get a pass card after you get a TBI either, you know?
No. You still have a position to hold. Like, you know, for me, I still had a spot in the Army I had to hold, and like you still had classes that you had to do. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, life doesn't stop. So one of the things you did mention prior to hitting record is that there were 2 things that you wanted to do and that kind of got disqualified because of your TBI, and that was business or military.
Yeah. So I was thinking either business school probably because I really didn't know what I wanted to go to college for. And I was like, well, my family's been in the military. I could do that, right? Well, the TBI kind of takes you out of the military realm. And then, you know, looking at business afterwards, I was like, okay, like I can still do this. And then it was, I was talking to my sister, who's actually a social worker as well. And she was like, you should check out this. So I started looking at it and then did a few beautiful volunteering experiences. And I was like, this is it.
Yeah.
And then got through undergrad, worked for a year and a half or so. And I was like, but I can't really do what I want with an undergrad degree. Like I can't work for the VA, like any sorts of, private practices or anything without a master's. So then that's where it led me.
Nice. And you mentioned that you do work in men's mental health surrounding a lot of trauma and stuff. That is very near and dear to me, like super near and dear, because a lot of men suffer in silence, and a lot of men turn to substances. A lot of men end up taking their life at a greater amount than any other population. For all forms of trauma, whether it's military service trauma, relationship trauma, childhood trauma, what have you. What have you seen as like kind of like a trend across the board when it comes to helping men and men's mental health?
Well, I think the trend is shifting to, at least I'm seeing more men being open to trying therapy. That doesn't mean they always stay in therapy, right?
Yeah.
But at least they're giving it a shot versus before they wouldn't even come. Yeah. I'm also seeing more men being open to the fact of my partner is telling me I need to go to therapy, so I'm gonna show up, to give this a whirl, right? Yeah. And then I think the other beautiful thing that I'm seeing is that so I do a lot of EMDR therapy, eye movement desensitization, reprocessing therapy, or somatic experiencing therapy. And especially with somatic experiencing therapy, but I've seen it with EMDR too, is people are able to reconnect with like their life energy, like that there's beauty in their lives, that they have energy to do things. That even though they went through XYZ, that adversity is no longer has the chains on them, but they're using that as almost like a stepping stool, right? To like say like, no, like, let's go. So you start to see these shifts, and then you start seeing like almost like I'm not like, obviously I know men can't have babies, but like people talk about women having like the pregnancy glow, right? But like you can also see that in a man that's completely depressed or in a trauma response state or a dysregulated nervous system, and then when they're feeling life.
Yeah.
Right. And that also means feeling the crappy parts of life too, right? Because often that trauma just numbs us to both the positive and the crappy.
Yeah.
Or it gets us stuck maybe more in the crappy, but we really don't feel the downs because we're avoiding or numbing or doing something, but we also don't feel the highs, right?
Yeah.
And that's a part of this, to be able to roll up.
Yeah. I completely agree. I started doing EMDR a few months ago, and it has look, I've been in therapy my whole life, from when I was a child all the way, till now. And nothing, I mean, with the exception of trauma-induced therapy, I've never experienced anything like EMDR, and it has completely changed the way that I think. And it's awesome. So when you said EMDR, my eyes lit up. I was like, yep, I get it. It's amazing. And the thing is, like, I've heard of it, and I heard about it about 2 or 3 years ago. And one of the veterans that I was working with, he mentioned it. He said, he was suffering from PTSD from losing his wife. Yeah, he had been with his wife for a long time. I think he was in his 50s, and like him and his wife were together for like 30 years. And he lost his wife. Like, she just didn't wake up one morning, and it fucking rocked him. And that started his addiction, his drinking, and all that stuff. And so when he was telling me about EMDR, I was like, oh, okay. And then he would come back and say, man, EMDR is really saving my life right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, EMDR is great.
Yeah. I mean, EMDR is very powerful. And again, I also got to speak to somatic experiencing therapy. I think it's a very, very powerful form of therapy as well. But just speaking from the EMDR perspective, I've reprocessed a memory with some people for the same memory. We were working weekly for 3-4 months, right? I've also reprocessed one memory in one session. It can be so fast, and every person's different, right? And people are probably fall in between there. But yeah, it's incredible to watch people heal.
Yeah, absolutely. I've EMDR, man, like it's I really thought my childhood trauma was like worked through. And
Mhm.
then I've been working with my counselor and she asked me one question. I was like, tears. Just
Mhm.
I'm not I was like, okay, let's hit this. I'm not afraid of the hard questions, which is I really enjoy. And I really enjoy doing the work, even though sometimes it sucks.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
benefit.
but on the other end of that sucks is a life of vitality, attunement, connecting with people you care about, or whatever it might be, your children, nieces, nephews, right? Whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I find that that contributes to my peace. And to me, like my whole life I searched for things for like happiness and I would try and find the happiness in other people. And then when I started to like search out that peace, somebody was like, "Hey man, you just gotta look for peace." And when I started finding out what peace looked like to me, started putting that together, man, like just life has been great. And like just the
Mhm.
addition of therapies has been awesome.
Yeah.
Um, but why men's mental health? I mean, you could have done general mental health, right? You could have done
Yeah.
trauma specific. Why men's mental health?
Yeah. So I actually started kind of general, right? And I've been refining past year or so. And I think really like leaning into like my personal experience, right? And being a man
Yeah,
and knowing how hard it was for me to make that jump into saying like maybe you should try counseling.
yeah,
Like it took years, right? It's like no, I'm gonna white knuckle it with working out. I'm gonna white knuckle it with yoga or running or you know spirituality helped a lot,
yeah,
but there was still something else going on that I couldn't get a beat on. And I remember going for a walk one day and like just feeling the anger like seethe out of me.
yeah,
And I went to a counseling appointment and I came back and I was like, I feel so much lighter now.
yeah,
And was it counseling? Maybe, maybe not. Or was it a combination of all those things, right? Just taking care of your overall wellness.
yeah,
I'm guessing it's probably that, right?
yeah,
But I think when we look at wellness, right, we think of so many different domains, but then men also don't always take care of their inner world. And
yeah,
if that inner world is crumbling or on fire, or apocalyptic, whatever it looks like, right, then it's like that's going to infect everything else,
yeah,
right? Children, your relationship with yourself, relationship with coworkers, whatever it is, right? And then even getting down into like patterns around like self-sabotaging, avoidance, right? And really getting into some of these deeper pieces that maybe it was those pieces of like 6 years where you're bullied in school,
yeah,
right? And there's still shame there.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of men now admitting that there's something not wrong, not right, you know?
Mhm.
And that to me is very empowering. And I do a lot of work on social media or surrounding, spirituality, but also, and recovery, but also, surrounding men, like
Mhm.
men's mental health and stuff. And I've passed my number out to, a bunch of guys and I'm like, hey, if you ever need an ear, some people call me, some won't. You know,
Mhm.
I've had people call me, they're like, hey, I just want to bullshit. And I'm like, cool. And then next thing I know, they're spilling everything that's wrong with them. And I'm like, okay, well, this is that space for it. Like, I'm
Mhm.
not a doctor, I'm not a counselor, but I can help point you in the right direction. And
Yeah.
so I find it very important, because for the longest time, women have been opening up and they're naturally inherent to, expressing their emotions and their feelings.
Mhm.
Um, whereas men sometimes we project
Mhm.
our feelings and our emotions outward. And sometimes and more times than not in negative light and in negative responses. Um, so what is the hardest thing as a counselor for you to do when it comes to men?
So I would say the hardest thing is working through because like when a new client comes in, right,
Mhm.
a man or older man or young man, whatever it is, and they're like, hey, I want to start therapy. The body knows we just get it. And what I mean by that, if you cut your hand with a knife, like you don't have to and you don't need stitches. You don't have to tell your body to heal. It knows what to do. You just have to, right? But what stops healing is us getting our heads about judgments of others, how we looked. Are people going to think I'm weak? What are people going to say about me behind my back? So getting through those defense mechanisms is the hardest part. Because once you undo the defense mechanisms, the body knows what it needs to do. Right. And sometimes people don't want, when we undo defense mechanisms, it's not to say that they're gone. It's just saying that we're loosening them a little bit so stuff can permeate, right? But that also is very comfortable, because it's like, well, what does it mean to go to a restaurant and not sit in the corner? Right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to feel very vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
Right. But that's also a defense mechanisms, and it was very adaptive, right? And to some degree, it still is adaptive, right? With the mass shootings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, it's not yes or no. It's, does it fit the situation? Does it not fit? Right.
Yeah.
And how do we bring in the flexibility to allow the defense mechanisms to come down, and then to also be there when they need to be there, right? Because one of the things I tell a lot of, like, if I work quite a bit with military and first responders and stuff, and sometimes they're always on, right?
Yeah.
And that's adaptive, right? Like you needed to be in that state. So sometimes when I start talking about this, people fear turning it off.
Yeah.
Right. But really what we're doing is trying to bring in the flexibility so that when you are snuggling with your kids, you can be off and you can connect with them emotionally, right?
Yeah.
Physically, whatever it might be. And then when you need to be on, you can be on when it's your shift, or if somebody breaks into your house, you can go on, right?
Yeah.
Like we're not taking it away. We're just trying to bring in the regulation back. Yeah.
One of the things that I notice, and I don't know if you see this with when it comes to like veterans or active duty military, is that they, for our career, that they teach us to get angry about everything. Get angry. If you're sucking in a run, get angry. If you're sucking in a ruck march, get angry. If you are on deployment and you're about to go on a patrol, get angry. But they don't teach you how to turn it off, and they don't teach you why they pick anger, right?
Right.
And so I found myself when I was getting out of the military just perpetually angry. Is that something that like you see with men amongst that demographic?
I think it depends on the man.
Yeah.
And I do see this kind of perpetual anger, frustration, or irritability, but sometimes I also see just like perpetual numbness, right? Where you don't really feel anything, and then they're like, it's like I'm going through life, but I just don't feel like I can hold my kids, but I just don't connect, or I can be at a funeral and just not cry, right?
Those are two scary extremes.
Right. And you talk about like how like trauma shrinks your life, right?
Yeah.
Or even overwhelming situations, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite extreme.
Yeah.
And that's how it is like you go from having this huge, like colorful, art piece of artwork, and now you're just looking at like a little dot. Right. You lose it.
Yeah. I was always told that my anger was bad. Like anger is bad, you know what I mean? Like, and I think that's what a lot of like society says. It's bad to get angry, but I don't think, in my time in therapy, I've learned that it's not bad. It's just what we do with it and how we process it. That's bad.
Well, there's a big difference between healthy aggression and unhealthy aggression, right?
Yeah.
It's a big difference.
Yeah. What are those differences?
Yeah. So, I mean, unhealthy, or, unhealthy aggression would be not being able to regulate it, direct it, utilize it for maybe what it's needed, right?
Yeah.
Do you need to be having aggression if you're watching like I don't know, House or just like one of the Love Island or whatever? I don't know. Maybe you do if you've been cheated on and that happens on the show, right? But then there's these other forms of healthy aggression, like if somebody invades your space and it's not welcome, right, or breaks into your house, like you need that to protect yourself, right?
Yeah.
Or if your boundaries have been crossed, to set in a boundary assertively, right?
Yeah.
You need that. And we also need to teach our children that there's a difference, right?
Yeah.
And sports is one of the best ways that I've seen to teach people this, right? Is because when you look at the fight response, right? Sweatiness, heart rate increasing, pupils constricting, that happens in gameplay, right? So children's bodies activate to perform, but they're also governed by rules with the referee. Right now, does trauma still happen in sports? Yes, it does. Right, accidents do happen, and sometimes they are, very severe. Sometimes they can even cause death. Right.
Yeah.
So there is the trauma element, but there's also predictability. And typically, when we're working with trauma, it's because something was unpredictable, right?
Yeah.
Or uncertain, or wasn't foreseen to be there.
Absolutely.
And then when sports are done, right, when the game is done, then everything calms down, right? So we're teaching that regulation of activating and then deactivating, right? But it's sometimes people don't have or kids even don't have the ability to deactivate, because then they go home to a broken home, right, or a threatening neighborhood, and they just stay in that activation cycle, right?
Yeah. That's why I have a real big respect for mixed martial arts and like jujitsu and stuff. Because they teach you these tools and these skills to decapacitate somebody, right? Or incapacitate somebody. But they also teach you how to turn it off. And they teach you there's a time and there's a place for it. And then outside this, like knowing that you have these hands, right? You don't use that to hurt somebody.
Right.
So, yeah, absolutely. So Daniel, real quick before we get going, I always ask my guests this question, and that question is, what are 3 things that you are grateful for?
3 things what? Sorry, cut out.
You are grateful for today.
Oh, grateful for. So I would say my family.
Yeah.
Talking about the journey of recovery with my TBI, right? Also, all those medical professionals that were there. I still have some of them on Facebook. I added, we still talk around the anniversary dates and stuff like that. And just to see like where they are now, 16 years later, right? And some are retired, some are still practicing. But to just know, like, okay, they've impacted one person, right? Yeah. And then also to have this space where I'm in my office right now, where I've seen people heal, and not because of me, but because like I'm just a facilitator. Like their bodies are healing, right? But then you get to see the energy shift, right? This almost like awakening in that life force, and you're like, yeah, like now you can tackle stuff, right?
Absolutely. Well, Daniel, I want to take a moment and say thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your story and your experience as a counselor for men's mental health. I think what you're doing is very important, and you're impacting people. Like you said, you're the catalyst. You're just that facilitator to help open the door for men to kind of step through it. And I'm really, really grateful for you, and I'm really grateful for all the work that you're doing. Thank you.
Yeah. Same for you, and for your story, right? That you share. And then also creating a platform for other men to share. Right? Because we're starting to shift that stigma. We're starting to shift that it's okay to have a level of or a couple degrees of vulnerability. Because that adversity defines our lives.
Absolutely. And everybody, I want to take a moment and say thank you for being here, and thank you for listening in, and just being with us in this moment. I am so grateful for every single one of you. Until next time, be kind to yourself, be gracious to yourself, love yourself. You are loved, you are worthy, and you are worth it. Have a nice day.